Right, the second defensive system in opposite colour bishops is where the bishop restrains the pawn rather than the king blockades the pawn. So it's black to move in this position. This is a game from 1946 that's sort of reasonably well studied in various endgame books on opposite colour bishops. And we can see that black's sort of in the second defensive system where this bishop is at the moment sort of the main holder-upper of these two pawns. And you know, if black at any stage could get the first defensive system where the king's blockading the pawns and the bishop's dealing with the kingside pawns, great. And that's the sort of swap that the attacker has to sort of be on the lookout for at any given time. The main way to break down the second defensive system is to get your king sort of supporting those passed pawns. So try and get your king over. If this bishop's going to sort of go over here and stop these two pawns whilst this king deals with these two, then the main plan is to go over with our king, and then it's sort of clearly a win. But that's sort of a bit more complicated than the first defensive system. Even though the first defensive system is a better defensive system, this second defensive system it's not necessarily harder to break down, but it's sort of more complicated in the ways that you try and break it down. Because getting your king over to your passed pawns can often involve sort of a diversion attack, sort of feinting to come and infiltrate on this side of the board with your king first of all, possibly with a bit of widening the beachhead as well, before finally bringing the king over here, which is where you want it. But in the middle of all that, you've also got the possibility of creating a passed pawn. Now, if you create a passed pawn, you know, if it's like king versus king on this side of the board, and you create another passed pawn, then you can win that way. So the defending side's kind of got to not let you get at the bishop that's blockading or restraining the passed pawns, whilst at the same time not letting you get a passed pawn either, because either of them are probably going to win the game. Anyway, how should black start here? A fairly sort of standard. I mean, you see that in rook endings as well. This h5 move, it's you want to get that pawn forward, so it's going to be easier for the black bishop to defend it. So black should start with h5. I mean, if black just does something else sensible, like getting the king in the middle, then a couple of things. White could just play g4, and that's going to stop h5. Or even something just a bit simpler, like king f2. White just brings the king in. King d7. So black's making sort of a run for the first defensive system, getting the king over to the blockade of these two pawns. Then white can attack the g7 pawn, bring it forward, and then bishop h6. And yeah, this pawn is a massive weakness that this king can now go and attack it. It looks like it's going to be quite easy now if black's going to go over on this side of the board. The engine's still giving this as plus 0.5, so black's obviously got defensive resources. But this is a target. So h5 is a pretty sensible first move. King f2, and in the actual game, black now played the losing move, which is a bad luck, to be honest, because it doesn't look like the losing move. It's pawns in the crosshairs. So when you're defending opposite colour bishops, it's a good idea to force your opponent's pawns onto the same colour as their bishop, because then they're sort of easier to blockade. But the problem in this particular position is that black didn't have time to do that, and now white's got a couple of winning moves, but I'll just go through one of them. Not the one that was played in the game, so I'll give you a little clue. In the game, g3 was played, and that's not a winning move. Black could have drawn it from there. But yeah, what black actually had to do from here was, instead of bishop d3, they needed to just bring their king in. We'll see why in a sec. Because they had a second chance to do that, basically. Excuse me. So bishop d3, pawns in the crosshairs. Good idea, but there wasn't time to do it here. White played g3, and the game continued. Black brought the king in, king e6. And then white played king e3. And now black blunders again with bishop g2 in the game. Now the whole point is that white wants to come in and attack these pawns. That's the sort of the diversion before eventually getting the king over to the queen side. That's the way you break down this second defensive system where the bishop's restraining the pawns. And that meant that black had to stop the white king coming in. So we could see, I don't know, bishop f8 attacking the pawn. And let's say the white king looks like it's going to go and sort of make a run for it now. Bishop's out the way. And the black king just maintains the zone. There's still some more stuff to discuss here. So b4, bishop a8, b5, b4, bishop a8, b5, and then yeah, king c8. A necessary move here is king c8. Watch what happens if black just sort of plays a sort of waiting move. There's a really clever little finishing tactic here. I mean, you could pause the video actually and have a go at it. So white to play. I mean, the fact that I've made it a white to play and win moment might give it away. There's a really clever thing that white can do here, which is just promote the pawn. Rook, queen, probably even bishop as well, I don't know. But obviously, why would you not promote to just a queen? Bishop takes, king a7, and yeah, it's won. The bishop might come out of the way, but then the white king can just go to b8, and there's just nothing that black can do there. So that's a really clever little trick if black got lazy at the end there. But king c8, and now it's just a draw. The black king's maintaining that zone quite happily. So that was the move that was necessary back here. The black king had to stop the white king coming into f4. He didn't. He played bishop g2, and the white king came in. So it's instructive to see how the game actually ended, and how this, how the breaking down of this second defensive system happened. And then we'll go back to the moment where, because this is drawn if black plays king f5. So what should white have done to not allow that instead of this g3 move, which was too slow? So we'll go back to that. But the fact is that black, if you like, gifted the win back to white by allowing the king in. G4, takes. Black just sort of plays waiting moves. Bishop back to d4. We're attacking the g6 pawn. Black's just still playing waiting moves. H pawn goes forward. Black just carries on waiting. White just improves their position as much as possible before going in here, bishop f6. In the ending, improve your position. Do not hurry in the ending. So there's no reason for your b pawn to be back on b2. And then at this point here, I mean, you could also play b. I'm just looking down the list of engine moves to say, why can't you, still not hurry and put it on b6? But what we're looking to do is we're going to push the h pawn. And if we push the h pawn here, I think that's a draw. It's not even on the list of 5 moves, so I don't know if it's a draw. No, it looks like a draw to me. We want the attacking bishop needs to control this diagonal, okay? Because we're not interested in exchanging the pawns. Black's easily going to, hold these two up with the bishop and the king maintaining the zone. We want to get the king this way, whilst this pawn's not going to be dangerous. But we want the principle of a single diagonal thing going on. This diagonal here is a fantastic diagonal for our attacking bishop. So let's put it on that diagonal. Bishop f6. Bishop g2, h5. I mean, if black had played bishop e4, then you've got this attack the bishop, this king f4 move, which is quite sneaky. So So you can get your king over. You want to get your king over to e5 basically. So yeah, black plays a waiting move, bishop g2, h5 takes, king f5. It's done. Okay, so king e8, king e6. This bishop's controlling this diagonal, and we're just going to bring our king to c7. There's nothing that black can do. So let's go back to the original position. h5 is a good move. King f2, bishop d3, nice idea, but didn't have time in this particular position. So you could pause the video here if you liked, and you've seen that how g3 is too slow. So g3 is too slow because at this point black should have played king f5. So white missed the boat here, although as it turned out they were okay. Pause the video and have a go at it. And apparently h4 is a winning move as well, but the simpler one is g4. And it's all about tempi. Like, black has to deal with that. Black has to do something about it. And if the pawn's taken, then the king comes in. That's what it was. It was all about tempi, basically. Bishop defends the pawn, and then the king's into f4. King e6, kind of trying to keep the white king out. G6, h3, bishop g2. And, I mean, you're going to win in a similar way to what we eventually saw in the game. King takes g4 wins. h4 wins as well, because they're both going to lead to very similar to what we saw in the game. Either of those two win, because we're going to do the same trick of the king's on g5. We're going to put the bishop on f6, controlling this diagonal, and then we're going to push the h pawn. The only move that doesn't win here is the only sensible looking move that doesn't win here is h takes g4. And yeah, white's going to get nowhere there. Black's going to maintain the zone. So that was that game. That was from 1946, sort of a good demonstration of the bishop trying to restrain the pawns. Right, this one is black to play. We've got a similar thing going on. This bishop is restraining this passed pawn. And pause the video and try and come up with a plan for black as to how you're going to break down that defensive system, or that defensive setup. So it's the same kind of idea, really. Black can't just get to b2 and do anything. But even on b2, the white king's going to sit quite happily on d1 with the bishop controlling c2. We need to try and get at the d2 square. Ultimately, we need to find a way to support the c3 pawn that's being blockaded by the bishop. But there's kind of not enough space to come through the middle here. So we're going to create a bit of a diversion. The black king's going to attack over on the king side, kicking off with king e5, and it's going to try and sort of invade, and there's going to be a bit of widening the beachhead going on, just sort of clearing out a lot of this, whatever rubbish is on the beach, I suppose, before finally making the way to d2. If a passed pawn gets created en route, then fine. That's sort of an extra weapon that black has. I don't think it's as crystal clear as when the king blockades the passed pawn. The only way we can get a win is to create a passed pawn on the other side of the board. Here we need to get at the bishop. We need to get and go and help the pawn that's being restrained by the bishop. But it's not like that's the only thing going on. You could end up creating a passed pawn, and that's just a different way to win it. If this bishop ends up having to play against the pants. So yeah, king f4, and there's at least two, arguably three, nice little tactics en route here in the various sort of manoeuvring around that's well worth clocking and thinking can you have them on your radar in opposite coloured bishop endings. So white just sort of waits now, and we'll see bishop to h2. The king's going to come into to g3, but white says no, king f2. Now this is the first nice little move. Remember, we're trying to get the king to d2, and this white king's doing a brilliant multi-purpose job at the moment. Like if this bishop goes back, we'll end up back in this position. Okay, so yeah, this white king's doing a great multi-purpose job. It's stopping the king coming in here, it's stopping the king coming in here. But if you think back to Shirov and his solution in opposite colour bishop endings, it seems, and it's sort of his immortal move. This one's nothing like as impressive, but it's still something to be on the lookout for. You know, if the reason opposite colour bishop endings are so drawish despite the extra pawns is because your opposite colour bishop's not doing anything, well, is it that good a piece? You know, is it as important as getting the king to the d2 square? So bishop g1 check. Always be on the lookout for stuff like that. That can't be taken. If that's taken, it's a very easy win. Okay, we can see that as a very easy win. So king e2, and then the black king is in to g3, king f1, bishop back to f2, and yeah, white just like carries on waiting now. This is another lovely little tactic. Okay, you think, oh, I want to move my f5 pawn, but I can't because the bishop just takes it while staying on this diagonal. It's not about deflecting the bishop off a diagonal. It's about we want to get the king to e3. We saw this in the last position. If the bishop takes that, we just let the black king come to e3. And yeah, that's just going to be a winning endgame if white decides to swap the bishops. So that's a nice little move as well, f5. So bishop b1, the pawn gets to f4. The bishop stops the advance of the h-pawn. So we just play a waiting move and then move the h-pawn. The bishop attacks the bishop attacks the h-pawn or tries to prevent g4. But we're playing h4 anyway. There you go, attacks the h-pawn, we're playing h4 anyway. And you think, oh, you've messed it up now. Bishop back to f5. It's just a complete blockade on the king side. In fact, we seem to have boxed our own king in on g3, so black had to be damn sure about what was happening next. It looks like you're getting nowhere. And we have a breakthrough. g4. What an absolutely incredible move. g4 is defended by white, or is attacked by white rather 3 times and defended by black 0 times. And we just play it anyway. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Obviously the bishop can't take it because we're going to get a queen. So that leaves f takes g4, which isn't particularly great. f3 takes, king takes h3. We might see g5 check, king g5, king to e2, bishop back to d4. Oh, the white bishop is not going to cope with those at all. In fact, the white bishop's going to get lost for that h-pawn pretty soon, isn't it? Whilst this bishop's going to be able to contain both the white pawns, principle of one diagonal again. Easy win for white. So that was f takes g4. But you could also see h takes g4. I think this actually happened in the game. This was a 1973 game, and this is actually how it went. h3 takes, this time king takes on f3. g5, king back to g3. And the black bishop just sort of copes with those 2 pawns quite happily. f2 check, king f1, and finally king f3, the black king is coming to d2. So yeah, at least 2 sort of clever tactics from them. If you look at that final position, it's fairly compelling, isn't it, compared to where we started. That's how black breaks down that defensive system where the bishop is restraining the passed pawn that we're trying to make into a queen. Right, next, this is white to play. Pause the video and have a think about a plan, possibly, for white. So it's the bishop restrains the pawn defensive system again. Here's our passed pawn that the black bishop's dealing with very well. We've got to try and get our king to that h5 pawn somehow. Attempts to just sort of come through, the d5 square at the moment with all this stuff on the board over here they're not going to work. So some sort of path needs to be cleared to eventually get the white king somehow over to the king side to help with the h-pawn. And again, if you end up creating a passed pawn on the queen side en route, then it's almost like you found a second way to win it, but I don't think that's going to be happening here. So, I mean, if you just look at an obvious attempt to try and do this, so king b2, the white king's coming around, king b6, we bring the king to a4 and play a3. That's a fairly obvious thing to try. Takes, bishop d2 check, king has to come away from b4, and the black king comes to c5. The c5 square, the black king being on it, and you can kind of see that's a fortress that white's just not going to get anywhere there at all. The black bishop can always just come and sit on d2 if it needs to be. I suppose white could try some sort of zugzwang, but black will, with their king would have to be on a4, and then black can always just there'll be a way to sort of sort it out. So not that plan. What white needs to try and do is they do want to do this a3 b4 pawn break, but they want to do it with their king on d3. Okay. And they want their bishop on this diagonal where it's going to control a lot of good squares, keeping the black king out of being able to defend. Stopping the black king coming to c5 is pretty important, sort of, clear the way for the king to come in. So, we start by getting the bishop onto that diagonal. Bishop f7, bishop f8, bishop e8. Black just sort of waits. Bishop f8 played here. I mean, if black plays king b6, then we can king d3, and the king has to come back to c7, because you've got to meet king e4 with. You can't go to the c6 square, so you've got to meet that. Got to meet king e4 with king d6. But then the b4 pawn push, and this is going to be similar to the way we break through in the, I guess, the main line of this. I suppose with the bishop still being on e8, black could try and push this b pawn, but then just come and take it. And if instead bishop f8 attacking the c pawn, king c4, if b3, we're not going to take that, obviously. We're going to come back, and yeah, it's going to be fine. So yeah, not king b6. Bishop f8, trying to stop b4. Get the bishop to a4, so it's sort of out the way and controlling the key squares on this diagonal. King b6, and then king to d3. And now again, the black king has to go back to c7 because they've got to stop the white king coming into d5. But then you play b4. Takes, c5. What's so good about this? I can just take this, and if h6, bishop can come back to f8, you can sit on g7, black's fine. It's not about overworking the bishop to push the h-pawn, it's about gaining that crucial tempo again. King d6 isn't possible, because then you do push the h-pawn. I suppose king b6 is, but it doesn't change anything. Our next move is to come into d5. Notice how the black king is just out the game. And that was a game from 1967, and black actually resigned there. Right, one final position. This is a study from 1951 rather than an actual game. Again, the bishop restrains the passed pawn. White to play pause the video, come up with a plan as to how you're going to break through, win this game. We saw a sort of similar thing earlier on, actually, where the black king kind of imprisoned itself on g3 and then made the breakthrough. And it's a similar sort of thing here. So g4 is no good. We'd just see a big swap off on g4, and yeah, black's going to be absolutely fine, bringing the king over basically. Bishop e4, a8 queen, takes. We're going to be just in time to just have the king in the corner, and yeah, let this bishop. That's probably a little bit more than just in time. This bishop can come to e4 check and just pick up. Whatever, you know, as soon as h7's played, and this king can just sit happily there, and that's just a draw. So that's how black would draw if g4 is played. So g4 doesn't work. f4 is the brilliant first move. I think what's so good about this, bishop e4, bishop f2. The reason for bishop f2 is we're about to do a breakthrough, and we want our bishop controlling the black pawns that are going to result from this breakthrough. So king g7. If bishop f3, we're going to play g4 anyway, because this bishop being on f3 doesn't add any value. It's not preventing this any more than it was on e4, because the black bishop is completely tied down to defending a8 equals queen. So it doesn't actually matter what black does. We're playing g4 anyway. If h takes g4, or first of all let's do f takes g4, because I don't think that's as good. f5. And we've kind of already seen this idea, haven't we, in that other game. So although this was a study, it happened in the other game. And it's gone. Yeah. What else could black try there? Bishop f3 maybe. Bishop h4 check. King g5 is winning. So let's look at, instead of f takes g4, h takes g4, h5 takes, a8 equals queen, bishop takes, and then king takes f5. So I mean, it was set up as a study because we've got this second pawn to play with. And materials equal. If black could just give up their bishop for this pawn, they didn't even care if they lose the other two pawns and get their king to a8. That's a draw. But this is just a win for white now. a7, bishop a8. One final neat little try there. Bishop takes f5 and king f4. Yeah, so well done if you found that idea. You have to play f4 first of all, and then, having got your bishop in a good defensive position, then play g4.